If I wasn't doing this, I would still be successful. That is what makes someone have the bones to be a successful person.
Kamille has made a monumental impact on the music industry. She's accumulated over 6.8 billion streams.
You should never live on the fact that you've done this thing and that's it and you're the shit. That's done, babe. What's next? And that will always help you to be in a place where you can do more.
How did your career in finance start to shape what now is your career in the music industry?
I was honestly so unhappy in my job. And I just walked out of my job and I was going out for lunch. I just didn't come back. And I lied to my parents for a while about what was happening. I was going to the studio. I hustled so hard. I'm so unafraid to embarrass myself.
We think of risk as doing more, and actually risk is more associated with doing less.
80% of the things that have happened in my career that have gone really well have been from...
You've been so successful already. You've won all of these awards. You've had all of these hits. And you are not afraid to be like, I'm kind of a beginner again.
You're only as good as the last thing you did. I've had 8 number ones and 2 Grammys, but I still want more. That is what makes you an incredible force, whether it's in business and life. Especially the girls out there, you've got this. Keep going, keep pushing. We've got it. We're going to do this.
That's my new morning alarm. This episode is sponsored by Butternut Box, who bring a fresh take to dog food. If you are anything like me, and you will not settle for anything less than the absolute best for your dogs, then let me tell you about Butternut Box. They essentially make fresh food for dogs. It's not processed like wet or dry food. Instead, it uses whole quality ingredients that you can actually see and say, like meat and veg. The meals are gently cooked like you would at home and then frozen to lock in all the nutrients. So they are ready to serve from the fridge. And get this, the food is so high quality that they even taste test it themselves. My dog Ziggy is a very fussy eater, and one of the best parts about Butternut Box is that they offer 12 recipes for you to choose from, so you can keep their meal plan exciting or find their favorites. They even have a veggie recipe too. All of the meals are perfectly portioned and tailored to fit your dog's specific needs, whether it's their age, their breed, their size, or any allergies that they might have. Plus, it is delivered right to your doorstep, and you can easily pause your plan whenever you'd like. Let me just tell you the benefits that Butternut Box leads to. Improved appetites, healthier guts, shinier coats, and the best part of them all, smaller poos. In fact, 84% of customers notice an improvement in their dog's health after switching. Butternut Box believes that fresh food will help your dog lead their happiest and healthiest life. Try a fresh take on dog food and unleash the benefits. Visit butternutbox.com and use code WORKINGHARD for 50% off your first 2 boxes. What is up, and welcome to Working Hard, Hardly Working. Today, I am joined by the incredibly talented singer-songwriter and record producer Kamille. Kamille has made a monumental impact on the music industry. She's won a Grammy, a Brit Award, been nominated for a Mercury Prize, all before releasing her debut album. Her background that spans absolutely everything from penning chart-topping hits for artists like Little Mix, Sam Smith, and Mabel, to now seeing huge success as an independent artist. Her co-writing and co-production credits have accumulated to over 6.8 billion streams on Spotify alone, as well as 25 UK platinum certifications, 5 UK number 1 singles, 19 UK top 10 singles, number 1 singles in over 15 countries. I can literally guarantee you'll know at least 10 of her songs. Her path into the industry is incredible too. She attended theatre school, but then left the industry to do a degree in economics and entered the world of finance before coming back to her first passion. In today's episode, I wanted to provide a real insight into how to break into the music industry, what it's like now and how it's evolving. And Kamille was so helpful at demystifying all things the music industry, offering invaluable advice and sharing her experiences from both behind the scenes and centre stage. But on top of that, she is generally just the most inspiring person with such an incredible mindset around success. Like, listening to her just makes you want to get up and work. Like, insert Kim Kardashian quote about how nobody wants to work these days and how you just got to get up and work. She is like, listening to this made me like riled up. Like, I wanted to go to work. I wanted to do more. And I feel like she's just like a pot of inspiration. So sit back, relax, and get ready to deep dive into the world of music and general inspiration and success with Kamille. If you do enjoy the episode, please make sure to give us a little like down below, and also subscribe to hear more interesting conversations with interesting people, because that is what we are very much all about. thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here.
Honestly.
As I was kind of saying, I feel like we haven't had, I would say there's no one quite like you, but I would say that we haven't had anyone that's like a similar career path even that's done anywhere near as like how well you've done in this industry. And I feel like it's such a tough industry to get into.
Yeah.
And you don't hear a lot of honest stories. You only really hear like big failure or big success.
Okay. Yeah.
So I feel like as in terms of like people like Simon Cowell, as you were saying.
Yeah.
But like I feel like you've done so well. I want to hear your story and how it's come about.
I've got a lot to tell you.
Perfect. Let's go straight into it. So I ask everyone at the beginning whether you feel like at the moment you're more working hard or hardly working.
I'm definitely working hard. 100%. I think last year probably, in fact, I haven't been hardly working for a long time. I feel like I'm always working hard. But I think that's because of my imposter syndrome, which is at an all-time high constantly. And I feel like it means that I always feel like I have something to prove, which is kind of a gift and a curse because it keeps you really humble, but it also means you're never going to stop trying to get something that you need.
Right, and it keeps you humble and thirsty and like very much like going for the next thing, but it is also like incessant.
It's horrible.
Actually, someone did a LinkedIn post the other day where they were like, I was listening to like women on podcasts versus men on podcasts, and women are constantly asked about imposter syndrome, like constantly. And the reason it is obviously if you go into an industry and you're getting higher and higher up in that industry and you don't see anyone reflective of you, then you're going to have a bit more imposter syndrome because by definition you feel like you're further than you belong.
Definitely.
Which is going to be exacerbated by being a black woman as well.
Oh, it's even harder.
And I'd love to quickly speak about that before we even go into like the beginning of your career, because like have you found your imposter syndrome has... It's funny me talking about how we always ask women about imposter syndrome and me being like, so tell me about your imposter syndrome. But like have you always had imposter syndrome?
I have, I think, because I feel like I had such huge shoes to fill. Like my mum has an MBE, my dad's like an incredible businessman, and I feel like my family were very much, successful people. So I definitely feel like I've always wanted to kind of emulate that in my own career, and I feel like I'm never good enough, and not anything that they've put on me, that's definitely something I've put on myself. And also, I do feel like in my career now that you don't actually feel like you're doing work. Right. Like making songs, if you're having fun at it, it doesn't feel like work. And so typically I find a lot of musicians and creatives will tell you that they have a lot of imposter syndrome because it's like a quick day's work sometimes to make a massive hit that could change your whole life and be on the radio worldwide. And I think that's definitely something I live with every day. I'm always thinking, did I do that? Or was that good? Or what was that I just did? That amazing hit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can see, like, obviously that's a good thing in lots of ways, but I can also imagine that it's like the relationship we, like, as our bodies have with work is that we tell ourselves we need to do something, like we write it down or put on a to-do list or whatever it might be, and we tick it off and we've done it. Or we go to work, we come back 8 hours later, say, and we've done it. That must be messed with a little bit when actually that parameter of like that you've been taught going through school, for example, of like you show up and then you've done it and you've essentially ticked that off. When that looks like such different things, like sometimes, as you've said, that looks like spending an hour in a studio. Sometimes it looks like a week. Sometimes it looks like it must mess with you a little bit in terms of your relationship between like, okay, I might have just done an hour and changed my whole life, and I also might have just done 6 months on something and done nothing 100%. Like moving wise in your career.
Yeah, definitely.
I can imagine that messes with your head a bit.
It can do. I think as well in this industry, you don't know from day to day what's going to happen. You don't, for example, you can make a song that you think is incredible and then it just literally completely flops, which has happened quite a lot in my career.
Me with my Instagram posts.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah. All of us are like Instagram and TikTok at the moment.
You're like, oh.
No, literally one like. I'm like, okay. But at the same time, I definitely feel like it's something that keeps me hungry. I think it's one of those industries where you're never satisfied because of that. So it's a good and a bad thing, but yeah, imposter syndrome is definitely a little friend that lives with me at the moment, for sure.
Yeah, and I heard someone talking about that there are two different really good approaches that I've heard about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
One of them is that obviously, like when we're talking to, there's like this an amazing Harvard Business Review article that was written by two black women who were talking about basically saying like, stop asking women why they have imposter syndrome and start asking industries why women, especially black women, are going to have imposter syndrome when they look around and they see essentially a lack of representation. And I feel like that's really, really, really important to think about, because it's like, okay, when you displace the onus from you to the industry. That's incredibly important.
That's a really, really cool perspective, actually. And I think probably quite accurate, because in my experience through this industry, I haven't had many Black female counterparts to look at for inspiration. I've had to kind of be that person for others a lot of the time, which I don't mind. And I'm happy to take that on my shoulders, because I think if you have any level of platform, I just think personally, I think it's our duty to kind of inspire others on some level.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely what I've tried to do. But I would have loved to have seen more when I was coming through.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, yeah, that's probably a very good kind of summary of why we can, as Black women, have a lot of imposter syndrome.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also a lot of like feeling the need for you to, for example, if you decided this wasn't for you, still feeling like you need to fight that entire battle because you're the one setting that inspiration for other people 100%. When it's also your life.
I know, right? That's the thing. There are a lot of celebrities who are like, no, fuck that, I'm going to do what I want. I'm not your role model. And I get that perspective as well, because it shouldn't be that, it shouldn't be a responsibility to have to inspire us. But I definitely feel like I'm aware of the fact that me just making a song, for example, I learned how to produce music on my own, and me now making productions on my own completely, and people going on to like Spotify credits and seeing just my name under producer, I know the effect that will have on other women, especially other Black women. So I just feel like my responsibility is to make sure I'm doing the most that I can with what I have, to at least show others that they can do that as well and do much more than me when they're doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing I heard about imposter syndrome, which I think is a fucking brilliant way of looking at it, is we talk about how you need to get out of your comfort zone. Yeah. And that imposter syndrome is literally your body saying you are doing better than you expected you would do. 100%. And that's never a bad thing.
100%.
Like, it might feel uncomfortable, but it's a good thing.
I think every single time I've signed a really big deal, like I've signed some massive publishing deals in my time, and I feel like every single time I've signed them and literally signed on the dotted line, I've literally wanted to run. It's so funny. Like, me and my management laugh about it, because I've like, usually after a publishing deal, the team of people there will want to like have drinks with you and chat and take pictures, and I'm literally like, get me out of here before they realise like what they've done. Because I just feel like I don't deserve it. I feel like, oh my God, this amount of money, I've never seen that in my life. And that's a very big thing I think that a lot of people experience when you're moving upwards in your career. You do start to feel like, do I deserve this? But you do deserve it. I think it just takes sometimes a minute for your brain sometimes to catch up with what's going on in your life.
Exactly. And it's being able to use that as a thermostat to probably show you you're doing the right thing and you're doing well enough, rather than like, you wouldn't have the opportunity if you weren't ready. So take it.
Exactly.
And it's never a bad idea. Even if they did give you the opportunity and you actually weren't ready, like, what's going to improve by you not taking that opportunity? I know, because you kind of live into it, don't you? You kind of like fall into what is kind of set before you, even if you're not ready. You kind of become that in a way. Yeah. That's happened to me a few times, actually, yeah. I've had to just get on with it. Exactly. Yeah. And I want to give people a little bit of context, I want to go back to your early life.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what your early life was like, whether this was something you always wanted to do, or like, what were your dreams growing up?
I definitely wanted to be successful. That was all I knew. I didn't know how exactly I wanted that to be or what it would look like, but my parents were very successful from a young age, and they worked so hard. They had like a chain of restaurants, and my dad was like into property, and then my mum went on to like do incredible things within business, and I just knew I wanted that for myself. And I remember at school being really into maths, economics, and I started off wanting to do architecture, realised the degree was 7 years. I said, absolutely not.
Thank you.
No. I thought it was really cool, and I loved art as well. So I was trying to mix like physics with art, but it didn't quite work out for me. So then I thought, okay, let me try something in maths. And then I went on to do economics at university. But more so because I thought it would earn a lot. If I'm really honest, I thought I heard people earn a lot in this industry. Why not I try that? I like maths. Why not? It's so funny how the generation has changed even now. Like when I see people going through uni now, I'm like, I don't know, even as a parent now, I'm like, would I force or encourage, like really strongly encourage my son to go and do this at university and study this? Or would I look at his passions and see what he's really good at and like be pushing that from a young age? I feel like you have to be passionate about what you're doing more than anything. And I think, I don't know, it's just not the normal thing now to have to go and do the whole, I'm going to study for 5 or 6 years and come out and do this job that I studied for. I think your path now is like, like this. Everyone's kind of just figuring out what they want to do. And actually, I think content creation has been such an incredible thing for so many people to discover what they want to do. Even musicians, I think, are discovering new parts of themselves through now having to create content. you're kind of discovering your likes, your dislikes, what other things about you are interesting. There's just so much more to us, I think. And I actually think content creation has been incredible for that as a society.
Yeah.
To kind of open up a lot more doors for people.
And to break down barriers in all industries as well. Because you can see someone like write a song on TikTok, for example, and that person can get a record deal tomorrow.
This is
like
it.
A publishing deal.
I mean, I did an amazing little video with Hobbycraft the other day. I went into Hobbycraft and they knew my whole song, and we did like this amazing content thing that went viral. And I'm like, that's an amazing brand that you would never expect to be partnering with someone like me, just thinking about how they can be different and open up doors to different things. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting world. I think we all just kind of discover what we like and what we don't like. And I still am on that path. Even though I'm in music, there's so much more to me that I think people don't even know. So I'm just kind of still discovering myself, I feel like.
Yeah. And how did that, before we move on from your kind of moving on from finance, how did your kind of career in finance, I guess, start to shape what now is your career in the music industry?
Oh, that's an interesting question. For me, I think initially it was just I was not happy at all. Like I was honestly so unhappy in my job. And that happens to a lot of people, obviously. But for me, I felt like, and I say this a lot, I felt like Neo in The Matrix when he's looking at screens and numbers, and I just wanted to leave. And it was so funny. It was a rainy day, just like when he got given the pill. Which pill do you take, the red or the blue? That was literally me. And I just walked out of my job and I just didn't tell them where I was going. I said I was going out for lunch. I just didn't come back. No, literally, that was what I did. And I lied to my parents for a while about what was happening.
Really?
I was acting like I was at work, but I was going to the studio to like make songs and figure out what I wanted to do there. And then it got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to tell them that I've done it, 'cause I just don't want to be there anymore. Obviously, they were so scared for me at the beginning. They were like, what are you doing, Cam? Like, trying to be in music, that's just not going to work. And they weren't being pessimistic. They were actually being probably more, realistic about the situation. But in this studio, funnily enough, I would be there writing little songs and melodies. And I ended up writing this song called What About Us, which went to the Saturdays. It was pitched by a guy called Rodney, who's now my manager. And that song went to #1. And that happened so quickly, probably in the space of 4 or 5 months.
That's crazy.
Of me being at the studio. I had a #1 record. And then I was like, I left my job and I'm good with it. And my parents were like, okay, let's just see where this goes. Yeah, they were like,
impressive.
But I know how rare that is. Like, I don't want to advocate leaving your job or whatever, but I definitely think it was just something I was passionate about.
And you also, like, I don't think, and I call your parents naysayers in the loveliest way. Like, I don't think naysayers are a bad thing, because they will,
No.
if you crack after the first person who says this is a bad idea, it's not a secure job.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to last the industry.
No.
Like, people who tell you can't do something, whether out of love or out of hate, like out of spite, it is always a good weather test in terms of like, is this actually what I want to do? If everyone told me I'd be bad at this, would I still want to do it?
Definitely.
If I wasn't the most successful, would I still want to do it? If your answer is still yes, brilliant.
100%. You have to live and breathe it, despite all the negative you might hear. And even more so for me, I use that as extreme motivation, because if anyone tells me I can't do something, I get so angry, even if I know I actually can't do it. Like bowling, I used to be really, really shit at bowling. People used to make fun of me all the time. I now get strikes non-stop. Like, don't play with me. I am that kind of person where I love when people tell me I can't do something. And I never forget, my mum and dad sat me down. I was at the side of Streatham Common, actually, where I live in Streatham, and like they sat me down one summer's day and they were like, Kamille, what's going on with your life? This was just before I got that #1 in that period when I was just at the studio. They didn't know what I was doing, and they were like, Cam, you need to go and get a job. You need to go and get another job. Even Sainsbury's, go to work at Sainsbury's. So like, just go back to Sainsbury's. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I remember that conversation like it was yesterday, like a script. And I love them for it. They were just being parents, but that conversation motivates me through my life. And it's why I work so hard. I think I'm just constantly trying to prove something to them, even though they absolutely do not need or ask that from me. It's just a weird voice in the back of my head telling me I can't do it that makes me want to do it even more.
So talk to me about that first few months when essentially like you were in the studio, you were writing music. Obviously you went to theatre school, you had a bit of a background in music, but it wasn't what you were doing, between that time kind of on the everyday. How did you build up your aptitude for writing songs, for generally kind of like, how did you basically get to the point where you suddenly had a #1 hit?
I know. I definitely feel like it was a talent that I had that I didn't realise I even had, because I loved music. I didn't realise how much I loved making songs. Like I loved Shakespeare. I did English literature at school and I was obsessed with like sonnets and soliloquies and how he was doing all this stuff. But partnered with my love for music, I didn't realize what a song actually was to kind of bring the literature side of it to the music side, which is essentially what we're doing. We're like modern day Shakespeare's, I guess. Kind of, but but I just knew how fun it was. It was so much fun. Like this idea comes out from your brain. You're in a room with some people who are like, yeah. Everyone's so supportive, and you're on a piano tinkering. It's just fun. Like that could not be the more fun experience to be in the studio. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to come out, and you're just making stuff. And I was addicted to being in the studio. Even now, like 3 a.m, I was in the studio last night. So I got bags under my eyes. You probably can't see.
No,
but I was literally in the studio doing absolutely rubbish. Like, I don't know what I was doing in there, but it's just a beautiful feeling to make music. And that is all I can say. And I think that's what's driven me all these years. I wake up every day excited to get to music and make stuff. And it's addictive. And then even more addictive is the feeling when you know you've made a hit. Like, I cannot express
it's
to
like,
you.
get it out. It's like...
It is beautiful. And you're in a room, like, it's so funny. I was making some stuff for Kylie Minogue the other day, actually, and we made this song for her, which is just the most ridiculous thing. Like, we messaged her after, like, Kylie, you're going to love this, and she's going to come and finish it with us. But, I mean, it's just like, it's like a drug.
With that, though,
Yeah.
I want to know how it felt when you essentially realised that you had this #1 hit. Like, you knew the Saturdays were taking it up, and then you could see it rising through the charts. Like, what did that feel like?
Do you know what the maddest thing is? When you always know when you have a hit when you hear it in Sainsbury's, or when you like hear it on EastEnders. Those are like the two things where I'm like, yeah. Or like you're driving up to a red light and there's like a white van man next to you and he's blasting the song out of Capital on the radio. I've had that happen so many times, and like it's this crazy feeling that they have no idea it's you. There's been a couple times when I've been in an Uber actually, and like a song I've written has played, or I think that actually happened with What About Us actually. I remember being in a taxi, it was playing, and I was like, I wrote this, and the guy was like, okay, like shush kind of thing. But like you're just so, it's just the craziest feeling. It's the weirdest feeling and the craziest feeling, and I love it. I love that you're like this kind of hidden person making this like music. But I equally know that there has come a point for me now, I feel like, where that's happened so many times that I kind of want that for myself. And I've always wanted to be an artist, but I went in through this songwriter route mainly because of my job situation. And yeah, it's just like an addictive thing that I want for myself now as well.
No, I can totally imagine. And there's a thing about, like, there's the benefits of being behind the scenes in that you get, you know, the success and like the creds and all of that without necessarily the downside, which is, you know, what fame brings people, which can be like really tough things in terms of like the public eye, all of these different things. But there is also the fact that you wrote that song, and you want people to know that you wrote that song, and you deserve people to know that you wrote that song.
You do want people to know. You do. I don't care what anyone says about, you know, being a songwriter and being happy to be in the shadows. Like, you do want people to know. Of course you do. Everyone wants the glory. Everyone wants the credit. And that's a human emotion that I think we all need and want. You've worked really hard on something. So it's nice, obviously, also to get awards and things like that, which I've had a lot of. You know, I've had an Ivor Novello, which I got for Outstanding Song Collection, which... it's kind of like getting an Ivor Novello for your career, essentially. I think Sting has one, and Elton John, and like...
unbelievable.
Unreal that I have one. But I think you do definitely sometimes have other burning passions and desires to want to fulfill for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at this point that you've just had a #1 hit, did you feel like pressure to create another one?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because as soon as you get #1, it's kind of over. It's like... they announce it and then you're like, you're done, essentially. You might not have one again. And I was like, I'm getting loads more of those. I don't care what anyone says.
Really like that feeling.
No, literally.
Either that or I'm sipping people's drinks.
This has, yeah, either that or that.
Two options.
Literally. But I was like, I want to have this every year. And I remember speaking to my management about it, and they are so encouraging of things like that. They're like, right, let's get one every year. You're going to do all this work. We're going to work hard. We're going to put you in these sessions. You need to connect. You need to network. And I didn't want to be known as this one-hit wonder as well, which can happen a lot. And so I hustled so hard. I'm so unafraid to embarrass myself. Even now, I DM people, sometimes don't get responses. I don't mind.
I think it's such a good trait.
You just can't care. Like, you shouldn't care. I mean, you should never have that much of an ego where you're unafraid to try and reach out to someone. Like, you're just messaging them and saying hi at the end of the day, and I love your shit, and why don't we collab? If they don't message back, it's fine.
Yeah.
I feel like, as you said, if you don't try, then you're definitely not going to get a chance. You might as well try.
I think you stop creating opportunities for yourself.
You
and
do.
I think there's a beautiful part of the come up that you're continuously creating opportunities for yourself because you don't think you're too big for them.
100%.
Whereas when you lose that, you stop putting yourself in position to like make luck.
Yeah.
Which is just not the place you want to be. Like that's how you stay
Definitely.
stagnant.
I think about at least probably 80% of the things that have happened in my career that have gone really well have been from me probably embarrassing myself and reaching out to someone. On a serious note, I could be at an award ceremony. I went up to Paul McCartney the other day, literally, and was like, I was sitting chatting with him. There's a picture on my Instagram. I was literally, and he knew who I was. I didn't even know he knew who I was, but Sir Paul McCartney was like, oh, hi. And we were just talking. If I didn't do that, and you just never know what could happen. And that feeling is so scary to me of like missing an opportunity. Like that for me, okay, like for example, in a studio setting, right, I will go in to a session and I'm probably only expected to write one song. I will come out 100% with at least 5 songs because statistically, I'm a mathematician. I just believe the more I do, the more opportunity I have, right? But then I always have this thing where before I leave, I always want to make one more song. And everyone's like, oh my God, come on, for fuck's sake. We just want to go home. And I'm like, no, just one more idea. And I go to the piano and whatever. And that last thing, I cannot tell you how many times has been the hit. Like, in my career, it's always the last song.
Really?
It was the last song with Jess Glynn, I'll Be There, went to number 1. It was the last song with Solo, Clean Bandit, went to number 1. It's always a thing with me. So I just have this thing of, no, there could just be this one more thing that you could do or try or speak to the person you could speak to. And it's like an addiction for me to always want to do that.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about like, it's such a risk not to do it, I think is so important because essentially you flip the fact that there's a risk of embarrassing yourself to 100%. The fact that the bigger risk is not seeing success that you would otherwise have seen if you just got over your own ego.
Definitely.
And I think that's really important because I think we think of risk as associated with doing more and actually risk is more associated with doing less.
Shooting your shot actually for me probably is the most important part of being successful, I think, both in work and in love. Like I shot my shot with my husband. I slid into the DMs. I did.
I love that.
Babe, I slid right in. But there's a way of sliding in to talk to a guy that is so chill. Like I said, congratulations. And he was getting a plaque. And I kind of had my eye on him for a little while, actually. And thought he was really cute. But I was like, oh. But this is the thing. When you're a hardworking woman and you're successful, it's very hard to meet guys. Everyone knows this, right? So it was literally me being at home most days on my own, like crying about the fact that I was still single and so lonely and stuff. And like this little spinster in the studio, never meeting a guy. And so when I saw him, I was like, yeah, let me just message him. So I said, congratulations. And he came right back and he was like, thanks.
You're amazing too. Want to get married?
Literally want to get married. And then lockdown happened. And we were just talking non-stop, having dates just before lockdown. And then I just wanted him to stay at my house during lockdown because I didn't want to be on my own and I'd really love spending time with him. So 7 months in lockdown is like 10 years, obviously. And then he proposed.
Love.
Literally. And that is how it happened, all from a DM. And we always say now, like, if I didn't DM him, we wouldn't have a baby, we wouldn't have a happy marriage.
I love that.
So I just believe in shooting your shot in all ways. I really do. I stand by it so firmly because it's just, if you don't reach for it, you're never going to get it.
No, 100%. Like, as in, it's a cliche, but you do miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Do, 100%.
It's a cliche for a reason.
It's true.
And this is from pure interest point of view from my side. Yeah. With the songwriter thing, how does it actually work? Like, what's the mechanics? Like, do you write a song and then you approach the artist?
Okay, it can happen in so many different ways. Okay. It can happen where you're approached by the label. So they'll be like, ooh, we're writing with, we're doing Rihanna's new album. Who would be good for this? Maybe Kamille, maybe this person. They'll get a bunch of people together. Then it can be where you might have spoken to the artist and the artist might know you and just be like Jess Glynn was at my house the other day. She was like, Cam, can we just do some sessions? Like, that can happen. Or it can be from networking, or it can be from a producer hitting you up and saying, I need a songwriter to come and write this thing. So it's a very weird hybrid of you kind of don't know.
How did it happen the first time with the Saturdays?
That was literally a pitch. So a pitch used to be the most common way. I feel like it's kind of a dying art now, pitching, if I'm honest. But I wanted to pitch this song to the Saturdays because I thought it sounded like it could be for them. I didn't know it was going to end up with them. I didn't know it was going to end up with Sean Paul being on the record. Shana Paul. I had no idea. Literally, I was just like, this song sounds really cool. Oh, why are we waiting? So I just thought this sounded really cool. And I thought Rochelle can sing that bit because she's got some colour and some flavour. That was it. Like, it was nothing as it didn't go any deeper than that for me. And then it just so happened that Rodney Williams, who's my manager, he knew someone at Polydor, which is the record label they were signed at, and he pitched it to them. An amazing guy called Jordan J, who's a good friend of mine, amazing A&R. He was their A&R at the time, and he played it to them and said, yeah, they love it. They want to record it. That was how it happened. And that can happen a lot of time with pitches. I have a lot of A&R guys on my iMessage, and my form of pitching now is probably like, I'll send them a demo, I'll make something, I'll be like,
voice note.
No, literally, no, I literally send weird voice notes. I'll be like, what do you think of that,
See why you're so
what do you think of that? And they'll be like, And the thing is, one thing I do love though, people are unafraid to tell me no.
Well, they have to. It's like everyone's job's on the line.
100%. Yeah, like I like when people are like, not that one, but what about this one? And I'll keep sending ideas, or sometimes I get distracted and I forget. But literally, yeah.
Do you know what though? I feel like the fact that you're fine with that is such a big part of being successful. Like,
I think being able to handle rejection is key. That and shooting your shot. 2 top tips.
and they go hand in hand as well.
They go hand in hand. Like now, if someone doesn't like my song, I'm like, all right.
Sure.
I really don't mind. I've got so many things to do anyway that I've just forgotten what you said.
And I do think that like with the exposure therapy thing, like when we become adults, it's kind of the first time, or like I always talk about going into a new job and receiving criticism.
Yeah.
It's the first time, like your friends aren't going to critique you that openly, hopefully,
No.
if you've got good friends. As in sometimes they will, they'll say you're acting a bit wild
Yeah.
or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be like, oh, this isn't good, or like this wasn't on time, or like, you know you can do better than that, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to be saying that to you every day.
They're not. Yeah.
Exactly. And like you have to go out and find it, because like
Yeah.
it is a bit of like it takes some time. It's an adjustment to go into a job and basically start being rejected when actually you aren't good at receiving criticism. You have to train
Definitely.
yourself to be good at receiving criticism. You can't just expect to be able to be good at that, because it's
No.
not something that we've been exposed to in the same way.
100%. And funnily enough, I think that becomes more important as you become more successful, because now I feel like, having had a lot of hits, I feel like people might be more afraid to tell me if something isn't their fave. And I love when people now are like, oh, not that one, or can we have this one, or my management will just literally probably sometimes not respond. I love that about them. Like, they're so busy with all our stuff, but if I send them a song that's a bit dry, I probably won't hear back. If I
like,
send
"Oh,
them a
okay."
song that's really good, they'll be like, this is amazing. Like, one of my managers will send like gifs of like nuclear explosions when he thinks something's really good. It's really funny. But then otherwise it's just silence.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's their way of kind of being like, yeah. A really good place to learn that is uni, actually, where you're doing sometimes really stupid projects with people that you really don't want to work on this project with. And it literally affects your university grade. Like, I remember some seminars and dissertation stuff I was doing with a group of people, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I was the only one willing to work and some people weren't. Things like that are such good experience for, like, as you're saying, learning to take on criticism. And equally, if someone now tells me something about myself, like, funny enough, this is a really funny story. I had a really interesting conversation with this guy is a massive producer. He has a reputation for sometimes being difficult. I won't say who it is, but I tend to work with him because I know he's going to make me grow, because he will always want more from me. He'll never be satisfied. He'll always be really picky. And we ended up having a bit of like an argument in the session. At the end of it, we ended up having this really deep conversation where he was telling me things that I didn't know about myself. And like he said, sometimes in sessions I can be a bit like thinking that I'm the only one making the song. And he was like, sometimes I feel like, you know, when I go into a session with you, it's Kamille's world and Kamille's room. And I was like, wow, is that how you feel? I didn't know that. And I didn't even know I was coming across like that. And it's just because I know how I am in a session. I can be very like, I've got all these ideas. One thing I do have is a lot of ideas. It's a gift and a curse. But it can mean, yes, I can get hits, but it can mean, oh my God, I need to get this song out right now, because the ideas come in, they have to come out. That's how it is with songwriting. It's really weird. But sometimes I'm not realizing maybe that I can overshadow or overpower. And it was nice for him to tell me that. And I cried, actually, because it was just a really nice moment where he was telling me about myself. And he's like, no, you need to fix that. And I told him loads of things about himself, obviously. But like, it was just a beautiful moment where we both just were vulnerable and allowed each other to criticize each other. And I'm so glad he did that, actually.
Yeah. No, I think that's really powerful. And I think it says a lot about you that you see that as such a positive thing.
Oh, it was
because I
amazing.
completely agree that it is. And objectively, if you looked at someone else in that situation, you'd probably be like, that's what they need to get to the next stage of their career, to be a better person to work with, to be a better person to be in a studio with, whatever it might be. And you have to reframe your mind away from criticism. And that's not to say that you should listen to all criticism, because trust me, especially with social media, like you need to know who to listen to.
Yeah, that 100%.
The more you receive criticism and feedback, the more you start to be able to differentiate, because you're good at it. You don't just see everything as opposition.
Definitely.
And I feel like that's really, really valuable and very transferable across all industries.
It is.
I want to talk about the move into a solo career.
Oh, the most stressful era of my life.
So talk to me about that.
God, it's so hard. I mean, I wanted to be an artist from the get-go. So that's the main thing. It's not something that's just come along on this journey. It's something that I wanted to do, but was told actually that I didn't look right, that there weren't any black girls in the UK that were trying to be singers. This was about, 5, 6, 7 years ago now, and that it just wouldn't work. So that's why I kind of followed the songwriting route. I did want to be an artist, but it's something that hasn't gone away. It's something that will never go away. I think I'll still be here wanting to be an artist when I'm 60.
You will.
I will. I will still be an artist when I'm 60. But I think it's just a passion I have. And I think I'm the happiest when I know I'm making music for others and making music for myself. If I wasn't making music for myself, it would be such an unhappy place for me to exist. And I see it kind of like when Michael Jordan wanted to go into baseball and everyone was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's just growth, I think. It's growth. You naturally come to a point where, okay, this is going great. I want more for myself. And I know I can create music for myself. Like, I've written and produced a whole album, K1, which came out last year. I had Nile Rodgers on my song. Like, and he even told me, after he made Cuff It for Beyonce, that I am just as wonderful as her. And he said, you should keep going with this. This is incredible. And keep making music. And I remember being in Abbey Road and Nile Rodgers was playing guitar. I was on the laptop, a black woman, which is so unheard of because it's usually a bunch of men making music. You don't see women producing music or engineering. So I think for me, it's moments like that that have made me go, this is what I want. I want more of that. I want to grow. I want to be like Pharrell. Pharrell is like my inspiration always. And he's just always been so prolific. And even Calvin Harris, the way that like, you just know when he drops something, it could be in 10 years time, but it's going to be sick. Like you just wait on it. That's the kind of artist I want to be. I don't want to be like necessarily someone who's jumping around on stage every single second. I kind of want to be more of like an artist that you just know when I drop something, we need to go and stream that immediately. Like, that's my vibe. So I just feel like I'm just going with the flow. Like, to have already had now a Radio 1 Song of the Week, which happened, last week on my current song Headline, which a lot of major record label artists aren't getting. And I'm an independent artist, having done that on my own. To get Radio 1 is like the pinnacle of like, oh my God, you got a Radio 1 playlist, or you got Radio 1 like track of the week. I'm just so proud of myself that I'm having these milestones. So it's kind of just showing me, okay, there's something here. Let me keep going.
Of course there is. And I think that like, it's so clear that you've built yourself such like a wide base for a successful career, like wherever you go within music. But I do feel like there's something so powerful to be said for the fact that like you've been so successful already. You've won all of these awards. You've had all of these hits. And you want to get to the place that you want to get to, doing the thing you want to do.
Yeah.
And you are not afraid to be like, I'm kind of a beginner again. And of course you're not, because of course you're actually like, you've still got every accolade you've always
100%.
got. But people get, like, as we've said, people get embarrassed when they've been successful, that having to start from square one in something else will like take away from that image, rather than literally being like you've done so well already at this solo career. Of course it is.
It's so, I will not like bullshit anyone. I cry so much about it because honestly, 100, what you just said is so poignant actually. It is definitely that feeling of like, you're exposed now after having all this success. Like, I definitely feel like, are people looking at how many streams I have? Are people looking at if this is doing well, if this isn't charting, or if this is charting or whatever? That definitely is something that affects me every single day.
Of course. And I think that like, and I know this isn't comparable at all and everything, but like I I've always thought this about the podcast. Like when I had a, had like a great social following, like done a great career, like got my companies, all of this. I wanted to start the podcast and like really wanted to have this.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, especially like still now, sometimes things will go out and I'm like, oh, and like people see that I'm at a certain level and they'll see, like the engagement on it or whatever it might be. But at the same time, nothing happens until you step out of your comfort zone and you stop being embarrassed about actually getting where you want to get to. Like no one who's done incredible things didn't have a moment where they were like, oh, this is kind of embarrassing.
I know. And I hate, do you know what's really horrible though? That now we have this engagement thing. I hate that word so much with all my whole heart. I hate the word engagement because I just think it's just not a true reflection of life and of art. I really don't. Like what you do is so incredible. And I hate that you have that also where you're literally shining a light on others, doing an amazing thing. And what if a video doesn't get a crazy amount of views or comments? Like I hate that we have that.
But that's why you need to, like, I've spent so much time retraining myself to be like, I'm going to put this out every week, no matter whether it flops, no matter whether it does well.
I love it.
I believe it is good content. And don't get me wrong, like, I can improve it and I can improve the conversations and I can improve my interview style, like, whatever it might be. But if ever I stop anything just because I put something out and the whole world didn't fucking love it, then I am doing like the wrong thing.
Yeah, but it takes a really strong person to do that. Like you're so strong that you have that attitude, and that's again so inspiring. God, you're a very inspiring person, babe. I just feel like it's hard to always have that, and it's very, very difficult. I think I can understand why a lot of us, including me, cry most days because you do feel really embarrassed, and that's not something that I think never goes away. I think it's because we care, isn't it? So it's like...
But do you know what's so funny is you probably would have said the same around the time that you were sending DMs to people like Sam Smith and they weren't responding, and now you're like, oh, fun part of the story. Like you're gonna look back at this and be like, do you know what, I had to put myself in a position where I was like, oh fuck, are people looking at the streams and are people looking at this? Like I always think about I've been starting a new company at the moment and I've literally been like, oh god, like I've had a few that have been doing really well, and like why put myself in the position where I could fuck that up or I could like harm my, my personal brand of like having done this or like whatever it might be in a completely new space, all of that. And I'm like, I'm fucking 2 years old. Like I literally feel like a baby. So it's like why do that? But also I would have thought that about the podcast. I would have thought that about Tala because that wasn't the first thing I started. I would have thought that about my socials. I would have thought like, do you know what I mean? Like there's always I so strongly believe, and like I would bet you a huge amount of money that you will look back on this time and be like, yeah, that was fucking hard. But it was hard because I had to go through hard things to get to where I want to get to. And it's just another one of those DMing Sam Smith moments.
100%. You're so right. I definitely know. I think it does help when you start to see little successful milestones along the way. That does give you a sign. I think I'm getting signs now where people are starting, because obviously as a songwriter people like to box you in and not see you as an artist, and I think the same things happened to Sia, Victoria Monet and Julian Michaels, all these incredible people who were prolific songwriters, and people just wanted to keep them there and not allow them to do the artist thing. But I think when it comes to online exposure of what we're trying to do, I always kind of think about things like Michael Jackson wasn't looking at Stevie Wonder when he was making music. He was just doing it because back then they didn't have all this stupid engagement stuff to worry about. They were just, you were just being prolific in what you wanted to do and just working towards something. And I think it's actually such a hindrance to our creation a lot of the time that we have to worry about this thing. Like, of course you want to know that it's like a good barometer of what you're doing. Yes, that people are reacting to something. But what I try and do now so much is like, if I have to post, if I have to do something, I post and then I dip. And then I'm gone. I'm gone.
I completely agree. And also like, in what world, say in business, say in like whatever you're doing, the metric that you look at to see whether it's successful would never just be one thing, right?
100%.
Like you would, which makes it kind of ridiculous that even in something like music, you're looking at engagement as the best statistic. Like, in what world? Like, it's so funny because when I talk about this, it's like the majority of people who I meet in real life, the podcast is always what they bring up.
Wow.
And then I'm like, well, sometimes when I, like, where are you guys? Sometimes I need you guys. But actually, at the same time, like, it's not the only metric. Social media is built for one thing and one thing only. Like, it's built for saving, sometimes sharing. It's not built for quietly listening and
No.
enjoying and having an emotional moment listening to your music, or dancing around listening to your music, or having a walk where you really need something listening to a podcast, like whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's not built for that.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't be measured in that.
It shouldn't. I think the only thing though that I do understand about it, because one thing I'm really good at is understanding the trends of like pop culture, right? And I definitely think, for example, when everyone was moaning about even streaming platforms, or people moaning about music on TikTok and how that, you know, trying to have this viral moment on TikTok, and I see these things as evolution of pop culture and how our industry is evolving and changing, and you have to be on top of that. That's part of my job.
Yeah.
It's part of my job to understand it, to be part of it, to live and breathe it. It's my job to watch Love Island. That's part of my job, because not only are amazing songs on there, but just seeing how people are speaking to one another, how relationships are formed, how they're broken. That is literally stuff I write about in songs every day. And I feel like for me, understanding social media has been such a hard process with music, but it's got to the point where now I understand. The thing now I take from it is that people want you to be very, very front facing in all industries. That's definitely something that we have to take on board, whether you like it or not. As a musician now, you need to be a front facing person. You can't be this artist that's hidden in the shadows and just putting out music and expecting everyone to buy into you, because more and more now people want to know who you are. And that's whether you're a brand. Look at Ryanair on TikTok. Like, they're doing more now for themselves as a brand by being so laughable and laughing at themselves than they ever had probably in the last 20 years. And that's because people now want to be part of what they're doing as a brand, and as they're humanizing themselves. And I think that's definitely something I think that musicians, all industries need to take on board. So as much as I sit here and moan about it, I'm also understanding of the fact that I need to be front facing. I don't need to necessarily care about the engagement on that though, but I need to understand that being an artist now means much more than it did 10 years ago.
And building a personal brand.
You have to.
Meaning that when people think of a songwriter, they think of you, like all of that.
You have to. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Labels literally will not sign artists now unless they have a following. That's literally how it is.
And I do think there's an important part of that where, like, we really love to complain about changes in industries, and really the people who benefit from changes in industries are not the ones complaining.
True.
Like, I do think there's like it's really, like, for example, every time like the performance marketing algorithm changes, say like on Meta ads, like,
I know,
it's like if you spend that
know.
time complaining, actually looking at how the algorithms change and what type of content you need to put in it now, and like
true.
all of that, like, shit changes.
I know.
Like, the people who were at the forefront of, like, say, like .com or like, you know, AI, like whatever it might be, were the people who were not complaining.
100%.
And like, obviously there's a separate part of that in terms of like ethics of like whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I do also think that like we have a tendency to scapegoat industries changing rather than being like, cool, well, every industry we've ever seen has changed, and that's why literally we're in the situation we are now, rather than living in the London of like 200 years ago.
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of it is fear though, and a lot of it is we're all scared, and everyone's, I'm sure, is super scared of change and how hard it is, because it feels like you've just learned how to do something and suddenly you've got to like
for sure
relearn the whole thing. But I definitely am understanding of, like, as you're saying, it's part of our job. Like, if you want this, also you got to fucking do it. That's one thing that my parents definitely always spoke to me about, was you have to just work hard at what you're doing, and that's it. Especially as a black woman, as a young girl, I was just taught that we have to work 2x, 3x, 4x as hard as our counterparts. That's just how I was brought up. So I don't know, it's very hard, and I will cry, and there are tears often. My husband is always wiping my tears. I'm always FaceTiming my sister most mornings. We have like a scheduled cry once a week. We do. It's really good. You should try it. Just schedule it in.
Like, if you could just dial me into that would be great.
I will. It's just as important as you having a cry about, or doing this for your business, babe. You need to schedule a cry.
Yeah.
How are you actually feeling this week? And what is on your mind? And it's like self-therapy. And I do it a lot with my sister, actually. We just moan about shit and sometimes cry.
No, I love that.
And then it's gone.
And then you're on to the next.
On to the next.
I want to speak briefly before we end about the journey you've had since having your son.
Oh, my baby.
My baby
Don't.
boy.
I will literally cry. Can we not? I love him so much. Oh my God, he's amazing. Wow. Okay, everyone tells you having a baby is amazing. So your life's gonna change. But it really is the best shit ever. It is. No, it fucking is. And now I'm like, okay, that's what they were talking about. Those annoying parents always telling me. 'Cause when you're pregnant, everyone wants to tell you all this rubbish, don't they? But it's actually true. He is the best thing that's, apart from my husband, I love you, Tommy. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And what he has done has provided me with this bubble where I just, as I keep saying, I don't give a fuck anymore. I just don't give a fuck because he's so important to me.
Yeah.
And I have so much to think about with him that it's put everything into a much more rational place. For the love of God, thank you. Because I was so irrational before, delusional about everything. I would moan about everything. I would overthink everything, put myself into anxiety and depression. I've suffered from depression so much in my life. And I haven't had depression since, because nothing is as important as me just thinking about these moments with him. It just changes you as a person. And I've been so much more motivated in business, in what I'm doing, in my life. I'm so driven. Like, all I think about is, I need to earn this. I need to do this. I've got to get this by in 6 months' time. I'm here. I'm moaning at my managers even more now. Poor things. Always texting them. One's over there. I'll tell you the same thing now. Always text them. This hasn't been done. Can we do this by tomorrow? I want to have this song out by this afternoon. And I need to do this. And I want to sign this artist because I want to sign artists now as well. And I want to like, I just want an empire. I want to write books. I want to make films. Like, I'm so excited. And I think that's all due to the fact I now have a son. 100%.
That's so beautiful. And I feel like that's I don't know, like it's so wonderful to like hear you talk about that. And I want to talk briefly about the flip side. Recently we talked on the podcast about how Lily Allen had said that her having a child had, you know, and saying her kids basically cost her music career, which I think that it sounds controversial, but also in a world where we set women up so to the point that once they have a kid, we just kind of forget about them, and we're like, oh, you go over there and like don't even think about working, or if you do work, like you've got to be expected to work as if you don't have kids, and expected to have kids as if you don't work, and all of that. How have you found like the development of your career and how people see you and how you're treated and all of that?
It's definitely a shift, and I definitely do naturally feel myself having to prove that I can still do this. That's definitely, I don't know if anyone's asking me to do that though, but it's definitely something I'm doing subconsciously. And I think it is because I have always heard those voices from people like, oh, you're having a baby, oh, you're going to go and take time out, oh, all right, bye. That's literally what people do. And I think they're doing it in a loving way. I'm not saying everyone's been horrible, but everyone is expecting you to just take like 100 years maternity leave or something and never come back to work. And like, I know in all industries, there are a lot of women who are like, I can do both. What the hell? Like, didn't Beyonce teach us?
Oh,
okay.
Did she
Didn't she teach us anything? Like, even Riri, even just seeing all these people killing it. And funnily enough, actually, I looked at Perry, funnily enough, from Little Mix, because she had her baby and went on tour with the baby. And she said to me, when I was pregnant, she said, Cam, don't let anyone tell you that you can't. If you want to do it, that is. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, right.
But if you want to still work and still be yourself and all these things make you happy, you can do them. And I remember being pregnant, actually, going into hospital to have my baby. And I was texting my manager, like, what are we doing next week? And not because I'm obviously a crazy bitch, but because I just love music. That's a love for me, right? So it's a hard thing when your job is your love, because it's very hard to kind of put it down.
Sure.
But at the same time, I feel like women should never be made to do anything they don't want to do. Whether that's, if you want to stay at home, you should be able to stay at home. If you want to work, you should be able to go and work. As long as you're happy, just being a happy mother. And I was very happy last year making my album and having my baby. I made a song about him called The Sun on the album, which is just the most incredible, beautiful song. And I was pregnant when I was working with Noel Rodgers, for example. Like, he didn't know, but I was full preggo. And I did a little fart in the studio, actually, a pregnancy fart, just to prove to you that's how pregnant I was. I was breastfeeding in podcasts that I would do. Like, I was bringing my breast pumps to the studio. I was just living my life as a woman.
And it's so funny because, like, I think that people would be so surprised that, like, we have models on set all the time who are breastfeeding and who are going into the trailer and pumping, or like we have a photographer at Tala who we work with all the time, and she's still breastfeeding, and she's just we just have a little pump break.
Wow.
And like, actually, when you start to make workplaces better for people with children, like there's a reason. It's probably because all of our CEOs and head ofs like have children, and are women like who have children, so they understand the caregiving role.
Babe, Yeah, our brains are exactly the same. If anything, a pregnant woman's probably even more powerful. I promise you this, a pregnant woman with all the thoughts she's going through is going to be even more driven and even more like, I'm going to kill this shit right now because I've got more on the line. I feel like making a workplace more, I don't know, encouraging of that and making that environment even safer and more comfortable for a pregnant woman, I actually think should be the way if they want that to be how they want it to be. Because I think you're going to get the best out of women. Women are so powerful and even more powerful when they start to like create life. Like you just take on this like superhero energy. It's really, really weird. I've seen myself do things that I never thought I could do. I can clean my kitchen in probably about 5 minutes because I only have 5 minutes to do it before he's going to crawl over to me and want me to pick him up. So I've got to quickly cook, clean, do emails. I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
You just become a superhero.
And I feel like that is very much what you are and what you were before as well. I think there's like this real culture of hating work, and like that's so fair enough, and obviously it's a hugely privileged position to be in a place where you love your work. But I also love the fact that you've come on here and said how, like, yes, it's hard, like of course it's still fucking hard, but how much you love it, and like embracing how wonderful that is, and how you don't need people to respect you just because you have a hard time. You also like have built a life that you fucking love.
100%.
You love the music, you want to do it, and like I think that is very inspiring, because I do think we often kind of only get inspired by like struggle, and a point where people are like, and I want to like, you know, like can't stand every day.
Oh, 100%.
And like, I'm not saying it's not hard, but actually having you embrace that and be like, oh God, I've got the best fucking job in the world. Like, it's so incredible.
Thank you. Like, I love my job, but best believe if I wasn't doing this, I would still be successful. And I want that for everyone. Like that feeling that you have. I know, you know what I mean? It's like a burning fire to fucking want to fucking do this. Like that is what makes someone have the bones to be a successful person, and it never goes away. And I feel like even after having I've had 8 number ones and all these awards and 2 Grammys and all this stuff, I'm like, this is incredible, but I still want more.
It's just the start.
It's just the start. And I look to that feeling to never die for me, because I think that is what makes you an incredible force, whether it's in business, in life, in anything. I think you should just never want to stop.
Yeah.
And allow that thing to come out of you and really, really make you super, super successful.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredibly important. And before we end, could you tell me the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's a really, really good one. I actually think, funny enough, it sounds negative, but it's put me in a really humble position, actually, that you're only as good as your last hit. And I think that actually extends to all areas and all industries. You're only as good as the last thing you did. And that will always help you to be in a place where you can do more. You should never live on the fact that you've done this thing and that's it and you're the shit. Like, that's done, babe. What's next? What is next? So I think you're only as good as your last hit. For me, that has lived in my bones. And I always think of that. The minute a song comes out and it does well, I'm thinking about the next one. Yeah,
and I also think like a huge superpower is knowing when you need that and knowing when you need the other side. And like being able to be like, yes, like go, and being able to like give yourself some real tough love. Being like,
definitely,
you know what? You haven't been reaching your goals. Yeah. You haven't been getting to where you want to be. Yeah. And you do need to push harder. Otherwise, everyone's going to forget that you even exist. Exactly. It's also a talent to know like the other side when you need to be like, cool, chill the fuck out.
Yeah. Okay, I will agree with that actually, because rest is so important. And I get writer's block quite a lot, which I think a lot of us can get, those creativity blocks where you're just like, I cannot think of anything. I usually then just straight away get Deliveroo, some kind of alcohol maybe, chill my mind out. Just break it up. Like, I think that's also equally as important. But if you're anything like me and you're always thinking about work, it will still be there with you. It's like a little friend that lives with you, isn't it? The work bug. But you just got to know how to keep it at bay, but also you've got to know how to feed it as well, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the perfect place to end. Thank you so much.
This has been amazing. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Oh, not at all. I feel like I'm going to listen to this episode every time I need like a...
Come on. Especially the girls out there. You got this, okay? Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You've got this. Keep going, keep pushing. We got it. We're going to do this. Thanks for having me.
That's my new morning alarm.
I love it.